So, good morning, everybody. First speech in the morning, which is kind of challenging. I was hoping that the caffeine level was at an adequate height, but if I look at the ranks, then some of you, that's probably the case, and some of you maybe not yet. Anyway, so I'm here to talk a little bit about Tamedia. So it's a Swiss media company. And actually, this year, the company became 125 years old. Those are the guys who founded it. It's been a while, so to say. And to this date, Tamedia remains a family-owned business. So over 70% is in the hands of that family still. The rest is floated on the Zurich Stock Exchange. Of course, within 125 years, things change, and this is a much more representative picture of how people look like these days working for Tamedia. Now, if you are in business for such a long amount of time, you kind of go through several phases. And the company has basically had a phase of 110 years where it was pretty much focused on one country, one city, one newspaper. After that, an expansion started, basically consolidating a lot of the Swiss newspaper industry to become the biggest newspaper publisher in Switzerland. And that's when I would say the action really started, because that gave us kind of a financial power to really start to transform the business. The next phase of expansion covered a geographic element. So now we're active in a number of countries. And most importantly of all, I guess, we transformed the structure of our business and the structure of our earnings. So these days, we make more than half of our profits actually out of business, which simply wasn't there 6, 7 years ago, which is obviously non-print newspaper business, mostly classifieds marketplaces. But as you can see here, we now have some sort of a zoo of various brands and activities, and of course, the zookeepers that go along with it. In a nutshell, what that translates into is a company that makes about 1 billion Swiss franc or US dollars in turnover, translates 25% of that into EBITDA, and as I have mentioned before, more than half of it is actually coming out of non-publishing business. To give you a flavor of a couple of assets that we have in our portfolio, let me first point out a company called Ricardo. This is Switzerland's biggest marketplace. It's a horizontal transactional marketplace. And it has 3 million registered users. In a country of 8 million, that's a decent quota, I would say. And being Swiss, we're kind of genetically attracted to watches. So watches is one thing that we trade on Ricardo. This watch here was actually sold for 100,000 Swiss. I'm not sure if I personally would pick that particular model, but hey, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and that's also true for the next object that was sold successfully on Ricardo for the same amount of money. And for the avoidance of any doubt, I was talking about the tractor. So I'm sure that many of you are now green in the face of, because of envy of not having bought the tractor, but suppose you had, then you still need to fix a date to pick it up. And that's where this service comes into play, which some of you actually might use. Yes, Doodle is a Swiss company. It's a company that belongs to us for a couple of years already, actually fairly long now, and it's a scheduling service. And if you use it, you're not alone, because 160 million people have participated in a Doodle poll worldwide in the last 12 months. 12 million people have created at least one Doodle poll, and up to this date, this year, already 22 million of those polls have been generated. Needless to say, there's also a couple of struggles we face. The biggest one is this. It's the decline of print advertising revenue, which is still a material business for us. And also the subscription business is in decline, albeit, fortunately, nowhere near as strong as in the advertising side. And of course, like probably all of you, we have a competitors galore. There's so many people who are competing with us or starting to compete with us or coming into the picture new. I think we could continue the logo orgy for a long time, but needless to say, that's not what we should do. On the other hand, despite all these challenges, actually, we're pretty happy in a number of areas. We're #1 in jobs classifieds, in real estate classifieds, in digital and pays news, and in a number of other areas in Switzerland as well. What is really interesting, though, is the fact that 4 out of 5 Swiss use our services, and not just one of them, but several of them. And that generates a big, big amount of data, and an equally big amount of lawyers' fees to ensure GDPR compliancy. But hey, again, that's what you have to do. Just to give you a flavor of what the company, what the group Tamedia knows about me, for instance. They obviously know what kind of real estate stuff I'm looking at, where, which category, which price class. They know what I watch, because Set2, which some of you might also know, is also one of our portfolio companies. The company knows obviously what I read in terms of news. The company also knows which cars I look at, this being an actual representation of my personal preferences. And the company even knows when I change something in my house. So believe it or not, this is kind of a home belt type of service, which has now a very successful offering in full service cat flaps you can buy and get installed over Renovero. And of course, the company would know if I was on the jobs classified board to look for something new to do all day. Maybe the most interesting thing, though, is all the data that is generated when I buy and sell stuff. Not just on Ricardo, but also on Ricardo. And of course, this would then divulge a lot of my personal preferences, including who I really would like to be in real life. Now, that's all fair and square, and that tells a lot about what Tamedia profits from having all these digital assets. But I think a very important question is, what can actually specific companies gain from being in our portfolio? And a couple of thoughts on that. I mentioned the family-owned thing. The good thing about that is that we do not need to stress ourselves or the companies with quarterly pressures. We don't do quarterly reporting. Our family really takes a long-term view, and we don't trade with companies. We don't buy and sell companies. Our focus is basically to buy companies or buy stakes and develop it together with the people in the company, with the management, with the founders, whoever that might be. And I think that one aspect which we have built up quite successfully, I dare say, over the last couple of years, is a pool of functional expertise in very different areas: UX, marketing services, data analytics, core engineering, and other things. And that is something that we can also offer our portfolio companies. And finally, I think that being relatively small, despite the billion of turnover, we're a small company, we can be very, very flexible when it comes to which sort of partnerships, which sort of deals we actually make. We don't always need, for instance, a controlling majority. We are pretty flexible when it comes to that. And we are cat-friendly. These are the highly, highly prestigious Golden Cat Awards. If you get one of those, life has no more challenges for you, let me assure you. 4 categories once per year. Last comment maybe about how we want to develop the company further. I think there's 4 points to mention. One is we do want to continue our M&A activities, obviously, and we have the means to do so. Second thing is our ambition by now is, let's say, Greater Europe, to put it a little bit into perspective. I think what we do on data is still just scratching the surface. And we can not only help companies do stuff with their data, but also give data from us to those companies. And finally, being part of the ecosystem of Tamedia is also interesting for the companies themselves, because there's a lot of exchange, a lot of stuff going on between the companies, and that, I think, is not only very interesting, it's also a lot of fun. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's it. That's us. That's Tamedia. Thank you for your attention.